If you grew up in the 80s or 90s, chances are you had at least one fruit roll-up tucked into your lunchbox. It's the one daily ritual we rarely missed. That feeling of peeling it off the plastic, rolling it into a ball, maybe sticking it on your tongue for that temporary tattoo was priceless. To many of us, fruit roll-ups wasn't just a candy. It made our childhood unlike any other. But here's the problem. While we were busy trading them at recess and begging our parents for the latest flavor, the truth about what we were really eating was quietly hidden behind the wrapper. Because the fruit roll-up you loved? It wasn't fruit at all. It was a sheet of sugar, artificial dyes, and marketing genius disguised as fun. And today, we're pulling back that sticky plastic layer to reveal everything. How they're made by the millions in a factory, the fruit that isn't really fruit, the shocking lawsuits, and the artificial dyes that Europe literally slaps warning labels on. So before you unwrap another sheet of fruit roll-ups for you or your kids, you might want to hear the truth. Because what you're about to learn will stick with you longer than any tongue tattoo ever did. Fruit roll-ups officially hit American shelves in 1983, launched by General Mills under their Fruit Corners line. The ads promised real fruit and fun rolled up in one, and kids believed it. These weren't just snacks, they were practically playground currency. If you had one in your lunchbox, you instantly had bargaining power. Trade a roll-up for a Capri Sun? Done. 2 cookies for a roll-up? Yes, please. The genius behind the product was its backing paper, the shiny strip of cellophane that kept the sticky sheet from fusing into a candy brick. It was a brilliant invention by a man named Bob Zoss, who figured out that without it, mass-producing fruit roll-ups would be impossible. That simple strip of plastic protected our favorite snack and also made General Mills billions of dollars. But GM wasn't inventing something new out of thin air. The idea of dried fruit sheets goes back centuries. Middle Eastern apricot leather, or emardine, was brought to New York City in the early 1900s and sold in immigrant communities. What fruit roll-ups did was take that tradition, strip out the fruit, and replace it with factory science. Instead of grandma drying real fruits in the sun, machines would churn out millions of neon-colored sheets that looked nothing like their ancient ancestors. By the late 80s and early 90s, fruit roll-ups were everywhere. Cartoon commercials, Saturday morning TV, and the now iconic Great Roll-Up-O mascot. Kids unwrapped them for the first time and marveled at the bright reds and greens. Every kid wanted to do the sticky tongue tattoos. Even without social media and Wi-Fi, it became a huge trend in the 90s. If you suck on a fruit roll-up and didn't tattoo your tongue with it, you weren't living. To us, they weren't just food, they were fun in edible form. And for our parents, the packaging sold peace of mind. Made with real fruit made it sound like they were handing their kids something close to healthy. What mom or dad in 1988 had the time to read the fine print when the box shouted fruit in bold letters? But here's the twist. While kids were busy stamping tattoos on their tongues, and parents thought they were giving their children a form of fruit, the truth was far worse. Because behind those commercials, fruit roll-ups was shrouded in controversies and lawsuits that were buried so deep no one had a clue. Until now. So how do you take something that's advertised as real fruit and pump out millions of rolls a day in a factory? The process is equal parts engineering and food chemistry. It's nothing like the orchards you saw in those old commercials. It all starts with a base slurry. But don't picture baskets of ripe strawberries or apples from the farm going through a giant blender. What really goes into the tank is pear puree concentrate, a cheap, colorless, and flavorless chemical that can be dyed into anything. After the artificial pear puree has been added to the tank, General Mills adds a cocktail of corn syrup, sugar, maltodextrin, palm oils, pectin, citric and malic acids, and more artificial colors and flavors. It's the combination of all these scary condiments that results in the sticky, fruit-flavored goo that plenty of us couldn't do without. Once the slurry is mixed, it's pumped onto a moving sheet of cellophane backing. This is the genius that made fruit roll-ups possible. Without the cellophane, the sheet would just fold into a molten candy mess. With it, it becomes mass-producible. Next comes the drying stage. The sun-dried method isn't used here since there's not a single fruit to dry. Instead, they use drum and belt dryers, massive machines that blast out controlled heat to evaporate the moisture. The goal here is to create a sheet thin enough to peel but soft enough to roll. After drying, the sheets move down the line to be die-cut and printed. This is where things get fun, or creepy depending on how you see it. Remember the tongue tattoos? They weren't magic. They were edible ink stamped right onto the sheet before it got cut and rolled. For kids, it was playful. For the factory, it was just one more layer of unhealthy artificial additives. Finally, the product is rolled up, sliced into individual portions and ready to go in less than a minute. And well, the ads made it seem like you were getting fruit leather straight from the orchard. The truth is, all you were getting was a sheet of acids and oils glued to plastic and packaged as fruit. So the next time nostalgia has you reaching for a fruit roll-up at the store, just picture the tanks of corn syrup and the artificial dyes, and the giant steel rollers pressing sugar paste onto plastic. We bet you'll never pick it up again. Now, let's get into the ingredients used to put together this addictive concoction by GM. The label lists corn syrup, sugar, and maltodextrin right at the top. You know what that means? That's 3 forms of sugar hitting you before you even get to the so-called fruit. Each roll may look harmless, but in reality, it's about 7 grams of added sugar. That's nearly half of what kids are supposed to have in a whole day. And remember, this isn't just sugar. It's sugar that's been concentrated, processed, and engineered to stick to your teeth like edible glue. Now, let's talk about the fruit, or more accurately, the pear puree concentrate. Notice how the box used to scream strawberry or cherry with bold pictures of those fruits dripping with juice? Here's the catch. For years, those flavors didn't actually contain the fruit they were named after. That strawberry roll-up, there were no strawberries. It was pear puree, dyed red, flavored with chemicals, and marketed as real fruit. It got so bad that General Mills was actually sued and forced to change the packaging. If you or your kids have been eating roll-ups religiously, you'd notice that they've toned down the fruit image on the box a bit. And then there are the oils. Today, you'll see palm and palm kernel oil on the label. But if you rewind a few decades, older labels listed partially hydrogenated cottonseed oil, aka trans fats. In case you don't know what trans fats are, they're simply the kind your doctor warns you about. But back then, your favorite childhood snack came with a side of this artery-clogging oil. Someone call 911! But do you know the most shocking of all the ingredients used to make fruit roll-ups is not even the concentrates, it's the colors. Fruit roll-ups has never been shy about its neon colors. But have you ever wondered how they made that happen? Well, it's a combination of dyes like red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, and blue 1. These aren't just fun, harmless colors. They're synthetic dyes that Europe literally forces companies to label with a warning. May have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. In the US, no such warning. Just rainbow sheets marketed as after-school fun. Of course, the brand will point to one shining detail on its ingredient list: fortified vitamin C. Well, all the vitamin C in fruit roll-ups is just about 10% of your daily value. But let's be honest, does 7 grams of sugar and an artificial neon glow really get canceled out by a dash of vitamin C? That's like calling a margarita a health drink because you added lime. So here's the reality. What you thought was fruit was really a mix of 3 forms of sugars, oils, and dyes, glued together with pectin and citric acid, and rolled in plastic for good measure. But how did General Mills manage to convince millions of parents that fruit roll-ups were the perfect snack for their kids? It's called marketing genius, and we'll show you how they pulled it off. You see, from the very beginning, fruit roll-ups weren't just sold as candy. They were sold as a healthy fruit snack. The commercials showed orchards bursting with ripe strawberries, moms happily handing out rolls at the playground, and slogans like "made with real fruit" displayed on the screen. While fruit roll-ups are still popular today, they're nothing compared with how massive they used to be in the 90s. To kids, it was fun. To parents, it sounded like nutrition disguised as a treat. But that's exactly the illusion. We just didn't know it. You see, behind that shiny box and those commercials was a lie you didn't even know was there. Real fruit technically meant pear puree concentrate, right? But the packaging leaned on pictures of real strawberries, cherries, and raspberries that often weren't even in the ingredients list. For years, strawberry roll-ups had no strawberries in them at all. And eventually, that little marketing trick caught up with them. In 2011, a consumer group called the Center for Science in the Public Interest filed a lawsuit against General Mills. They accused General Mills of intentionally misleading parents by showing strawberries on their packaging when the product contained 0 strawberries. After years in court, General Mills quietly settled in 2014, agreeing to change the packaging. No more showing fruits that weren't inside, and no more made with real fruit claims unless they actually specify what fruit. It wasn't the only time their labeling landed them in trouble. In 2019, another lawsuit, this time a class action, was filed against fruit roll-ups for claiming no artificial flavors, even though they were using synthetic malic acid as a flavor enhancer. The same chemical they put in each fruit roll-up is the same chemical used in cleaning metals to remove rust and scale. How wild is that to truly think about? We were giving this to our kids. Mind-blowing. Anyway, the case argued that parents were being misled into thinking that they were avoiding artificial ingredients, when, in reality, the line between natural and synthetic was being blurred. But you see the irony of it all? These lawsuits didn't just expose a marketing tactic. They pulled back the curtain on how the brand relied on perception over reality. Kids saw candy. Parents saw fruit. General Mills saw profits. And here's the kicker. Even after lawsuits, even after settlements, the marketing spin didn't really stop, it just evolved. Today, the box still shouts "made with real fruit" and proudly points to vitamin C. But real fruit still mostly means pear puree, and the vitamin C is still sprinkled in like a fig leaf to cover up the sugar and dyes. One lawyer in the case summed it up perfectly. It's fruit in name, candy in fact. And that's the heart of the fruit roll-up story. Advertising that bends the truth comfortably and without consequences. If you thought the only problem with fruit roll-ups was what's inside the wrapper, think again. In 2020, a massive recall hit Fruit Roll-Up's cousin brand in Australia, Uncle Toby's Roll-Ups, after metal fragments were found in certain batches. A separate recall warned of plastic contamination, traced back to a machinery malfunction during production. Imagine unwrapping a roll-up, expecting neon sugar and biting into a sliver of steel. That's not a fruit snack, that's a dental emergency. Now, to be fair, the US hasn't had a major fruit roll-ups recall in recent years. But here's the reality. When you're pumping out millions of rolls a day on high-speed lines, it only takes one missed inspection or one faulty blade on a machine for foreign matter or excess chemicals to slip through. And when you're talking about a product marketed to kids, that's a risk no parent wants to take. And let's not forget, this is a snack that literally comes glued to plastic. Do you have any idea how unhealthy plastic is? And the crazy part is that kids back in the day crunched on these plastics long after they finished licking off the candy. It wasn't too long ago that the company was forced to issue public reminders not to eat the wrapper after viral TikToks showed people biting into the whole thing. That's enough reason to wonder about the quality control involving roll-ups. So yes, the dyes and sugars are one thing, but the factory risks remind us of the bigger picture. When a product is this heavily industrialized, it stops being food and starts being manufactured poison in disguise. And the only way to be safe is to avoid getting hooked on it. Believe it or not, sugar is a worse addiction compared to all the other addictions out there. Now, I want you to close your eyes and think back for a moment. You're 8 years old, sitting in the school cafeteria. You pull out your lunchbox and there it is, a fruit roll-up. The other kids lean in. You peel back the wrapper slowly, like you're discovering treasure. Maybe you stretch it out, roll it into a ball, press a tongue tattoo to your mouth, or trade it for 2 cookies. For a second, life is simple, colorful, and sweet. That memory is powerful, and it's why millions of us still feel a little jolt of excitement when we see a box on the shelf today. But nostalgia has a funny way of glossing over the truth. Because when you unwrap that roll as an adult and actually read the label, the magic starts to vanish and you start to see fruit roll-ups for what it really is. Believe it or not, this is one of the fastest routes to type 2 diabetes. And it doesn't matter if you're 12 or 40. Once you get hooked on this candy, you'd have to be really intentional to wean yourself off it. Fruit roll-ups might look harmless, but it's far from it. GM knew what they were doing when they loaded 3 forms of sugar and about a dozen additives in it. That cafeteria treasure in middle school was really a chemistry experiment rolled thin and sold as fun. The tongue tattoos, the neon colors, even the slick marketing were designed not to nourish, but to hook us on the sugar. And that's the heartbreak of fruit roll-ups. The nostalgia is real. The joy was real. But the product itself? More illusion than fruit, more science than snack. So after all of this, the history, the factory secrets, the sugar, the dyes, the lawsuits, and the scandals, what's the real lesson hiding inside that shiny wrapper? It's this. Fruit roll-ups were never really about fruit. They were about marketing. About selling parents the illusion of something healthy while hooking kids on neon sugar disguised as fun. And that's the bigger truth here. Fruit roll-ups aren't unique. They're just one of the clearest examples of how food companies engineer not just products, but memories. They give us mascots, commercials, tongue tattoos, and playground trades. They wrap sugar in cellophane and call it fruit. And for decades, it worked. We believed it. We loved it. We begged for it. But food should fuel you, not fool you. And once you see past the marketing gimmick, it's hard to look at that neon strip the same way again. Does that mean you can never eat a fruit roll-up again? Not necessarily. Nostalgia is powerful, and biting into one will always bring back a rush of childhood memories. But now you know the other side of the story, the sticky truth hiding under the wrapper. So the next time you see a box at the store, ask yourself, are you craving something fruity and fun, or are you craving the memory of being 8 years old in a cafeteria, peeling back that strip and feeling like you just won the snack lottery? At the end of the day, what's life without a little fun?